Natural history museums everywhere line up ape-to-human icons that supposedly show humans evolving from ape-like creatures over millions of years. The final icon in this parade is typically Neanderthals, holding the 40,000 to 400,000 years ago time slot. Just decades ago, Neanderthals were regarded in museums and textbooks as gorilla-like cavemen. This is because their fossils were viewed through an evolutionary lens, being framed as some type of last step between ape-like creatures and humans. The scientist who gave Neanderthal man its name believed their thoughts and desires never soared beyond those of a brute, and emphasized how their heavy brow ridges resembled those of chimps and gorillas. Another leading evolutionist, Ernst Haeckel, even proposed naming the species Homo stupidus. Textbook and newspaper articles displayed them for decades as half-ape, half-human, brutish beasts, complete with clubs and primitive expressions. But how can we make sense of these fossils without an evolutionary interpretation? How can they be viewed through a biblical lens? Actually, the biblical view on Neanderthals fits the data perfectly. They were just human. Just like how people groups vary today, Neanderthals had distinct body types, but scientists have recently confirmed that they lived and had families with people who look just like humans do today. They are also found buried with people we would classify as modern humans, and jewelry, musical instruments, weaponry, medicine, and artwork have been found in and around their graves. A recent discovery even found that Neanderthals combed beaches and went diving to find certain shells to be used as tools. Modern scientists are still trying to replicate how they made an advanced type of glue for their weapons. This synthesized pitch was made using a process known by chemists today as dry distillation and requires careful heat regulation and airtight pottery containers. Neanderthals were also great at making cordage and tying knots, controlling fire, preserving meat, tailoring clothes, and making shelters and living floors. They were not brutish gorilla-like cavemen holding clubs as represented through the evolutionary lens for decades. They were humans, just like we are humans. Now they're even portrayed in museums sporting stylish ponytails and suits. Though the evolutionary timeline has Neanderthals going extinct 30 to 40,000 years ago, the latest DNA evidence shows that they never actually went extinct, but were just assimilated into other human populations. We agree with the director of the leading Neanderthal museum who said, "The irony is that the scientific community is going to have to come around to the acceptance that the Denisovans and the Neanderthals also belong to the species which we all call Homo sapiens." Is there scientific evidence that supports the Bible's account of human origins? Let's look and find out. One of the most obvious examples that humans are created is found in our hearing system. Taking an honest look at our hearing system reveals an obvious designer. How could random, mindless evolution engineer 5 separate components that have no purpose, unless they are all joined together in a certain order and in a certain way for the purpose of hearing? Even if some random process could put together just one of these 5 components, it takes engineering and intelligence to join these 5 parts together so that the sound waves from speech could be heard and then immediately interpreted as communication in our minds. The eye might even be more convincing, containing hundreds of parts that had to be assembled to create the overall purpose and function for seeing. Random chance certainly doesn't have the intelligence needed for assembling different parts into a cohesive, interdependent system for sight to work. Next, let's take a quick tour of some scientific discoveries over just the last few decades that give strong evidence for the Bible's account of human origins. Let's start by looking at DNA, a protein-coding language that cannot be replicated by any scientist in the world. It's the most sophisticated information storage system in the known universe. Nothing comes even close. In fact, over 10,000 DNA molecules can fit on the head of a pin, and unfolding just one of them reveals 6 feet of instructions capable of building who you are. Stretching out DNA in the trillions of cells in your body could reach to the sun and back hundreds of times. Perhaps you've heard that humans and chimps share 98% of their DNA, but did you know that when they made this comparison, they ignored 18% of the chimp genome and 25% of the human genome? Plus, the chimp genome is over 6% larger than ours. When they give the 98% similarity figure, it's based on cherry-picked DNA regions that were similar. Of course, humans and chimps have similar DNA. They're mammals living in the world with similar requirements for biological life. Our DNA is also similar to several other creatures. What about DNA research that purportedly shows our genome dates back tens of thousands of years, far outreaching the biblical timeline? Recent research into mitochondrial DNA mutation rates gives the answer. This is unique because it comes only from the mother's egg, making it useful for tracing maternal ancestry. Since DNA was sequenced in 1981, researchers have been studying the mutation rates in mtDNA to try and estimate when different groups of people possibly diverged. Evolutionary researchers have based these timelines on the assumption that humans and chimps shared a common ancestor about 5 million years ago. That date was based on counting the mtDNA and protein differences between all the great apes and timing their divergence using dates from fossils of one great ape's ancestor. This evolutionary assumption counts on the mtDNA mutation rate of about one mutation every 300 to 600 generations, or one every 6,000 to 12,000 years. But do these evolutionary assumptions hold up? Actually, recent studies have shown that the actual mutation rates are much faster than the rates assumed by evolution theory, causing researchers to rethink the mtDNA clock they depend on for forensic investigations. This discovery was published in Nature Genetics by Dr. Parsons and his colleagues, who investigated the mtDNA of 357 individuals from 134 different families representing 327 generational events, which are counted by the number of times that mothers passed on mtDNA to their offspring. Parsons' team showed that mutation rates actually occur at a rate of 1 every 33 generations, which was 20-fold higher than the estimates based on the theoretical 5 million year timeline between chimps and humans that expect about one mutation in every 300 to 600 generations, or one every 6,000 to 12,000 years. This study was published in Nature Genetics, and the faster rate has stood fast even as the number of families in the study has doubled. Other studies have confirmed these findings since Parsons' discovery. For example, Howell's team analyzed mtDNA from 40 members of a family with an overall divergence rate of one mutation every 25 to 40 generations. Howell remarked that both of our studies, his and Parsons, came to a remarkably similar conclusion. Based on these findings, Howell warned that phylogenetic studies that try to estimate the evolutionary branching between animal kinds, have substantially underestimated the rate of mtDNA divergence. As one science writer puts it, evolutionists are most concerned about the effect of a faster mutation rate. For example, researchers have calculated that mitochondrial Eve, the woman whose mtDNA was ancestral to that in all living people, lived 100,000 to 200,000 years ago in Africa. Using the new clock, she would be a mere 6,000 years old. This, of course, fits well within the Bible's timeline. Based on their updated work, identifying 220 soldiers' remains from World War II to the present, Parsons and Holland now have new guidelines adopted by the FBI as well to account for a faster mutation rate. Studies have also confirmed that there was a massive DNA variability explosion that happened on Earth just thousands of years ago, within the time frame of Noah's flood and the Babel dispersion that occurred afterwards. Next, let's consider the extent of the fossil evidence that exists for human evolution. Charles Darwin postured that if evolution was true, innumerable transitional forms must have existed. He also questioned, why do we not find them embedded in countless numbers in the crust of the Earth? We agree. If human evolution was true, wouldn't we expect the ground to be filled with numerous transitions between ape-like creatures? We agree with Darwin that the lack of transitions is the most obvious and serious objection which can be urged against the theory of evolution. Even Ian Tattersall, emeritus curator with the American Museum of Natural History, noted that you could fit all the supposed ape-to-human fossil evidence into the back of a pickup truck if you didn't mind how much you jumbled everything up. With centuries of recorded history and over 7 billion interfertile humans on the planet today, we should certainly have more than a truck bed of fossil evidence if evolution was true. The truth is that we are too sophisticated to evolve out of some primordial mud pit over billions of years. We sing, worship, have ceremonies, pray, educate ourselves, and do so many other things that reflect the fact that we are spiritual beings and not animals. God made us on the sixth day of creation to name and take dominion over the entire animal kingdom. This happened just thousands of years ago. God sent His Son to redeem us from the fall that happened when our real forefathers sinned. We have been mercifully brought into a place of grace, forgiveness, and rest if we accept His sacrifice by confessing our sins and surrender our lives to Him. Looking for answers about what the Bible teaches about creation, the fossil record, dinosaurs? Download the Genesis Apologetics app from the iTunes or Google Play stores for answers to these questions and more.